So wonderful to see you, sweet sisters, here. And today is September the 10th,
Hello.
2025. Hello, hello. And this is another episode of Ascension with A Course in Miracles. Today's episode is number 213. And of course, all of the previous episodes are can be found on my YouTube channel. And they're all pretty much every one of them is there. So 212 before today's, except for a few when I my videos were being censored. And looking back, it's funny to believe that messages that were empowering people got censored, that YouTube would censor my talks about lessons from A Course in Miracles, that we're under no laws but God's. So today I'm excited to keep keep with the theme that we've had for the last couple of weeks, which has been reminding us of our holiness. If we don't fully believe and trust that we are holy, it is very, very difficult. Let me just say impossible to wake up, because our holiness is the acceptance that we are as God created us. And some of you who were in last night's class, isn't that what we were talking about? That's the whole point. When you really understand the teachings of the course, or the teachings of any message that has been given to us over eons, that lead us to the recognition that not only are we as God created us, but we need to understand who is this God that created us. Most of us grew up with a belief that God was a wrathful God, a vengeful God, a mean God. I grew up in Catholicism, and even when I left more of the Catholic teachings and moved into more either regular Christianity, more mainstream Christianity. At the time, I started attending some holy roller churches, and it was all about, fear of God. And none of that ever sat right with me, except for the music. I like some of the music. I loved worship music. The messages just didn't sit well with me. Why am I fearing the God that created me? It was nonsensical. Now, I accepted it because I feared my father. I was deathly afraid of my father. My dad was the one who would punish us. If mom said we did something wrong, because my dad really wasn't around to determine that we did anything wrong, but my mom knew. And of course, dad would be the one who would get the belt out. And so I was afraid of my father. So it made sense to be afraid of God the Father because of the upbringing that I had. However, when I became a parent, I realized no child should be afraid of their parents. I didn't want my kids to be afraid of me. That to me, hey, sweet ladies, thanks for joining us. That to me would have been the sign of failure as a parent if my kids were afraid of me. So my understanding of God began to change drastically when I became a parent. It's like, what parent would do this? What parent would turn their children into pillars of salt if they don't obey? There was no way I was ever going to punish my children for the rest of eternity if they did not obey me. And that began the opportunity for me to really question things. And as I began to question things, I began to change my perspective about God, not not to the extent that happened after my mom passed away. I became a mom when I was 26 years old, and then I had Spencer at 34. So I was just beginning to have a shift in perception about God, but nowhere near was I to when I was 42 and my mom died. So many, many years later, almost 20 years since my daughter was born. When my mom passed away, then I went into this rabbit hole. I needed to find out, is there really a hell? Am I going to burn in hell forever? Because I was petrified that that's where my mom went. And if that was the case, then that's where I was going to go. And that didn't make sense to me when I understood what I was understanding about being a parent. A loving parent doesn't do that to their child. So The reason we're going to continue with this theme about holiness is because until you understand two things, God, the creator of all that is, the consciousness that has given birth to everything in humanity, not in humanity, in creation, including humans, the God that has created all that is a loving God. It is only a source of love. It does not know fear. Fear is the absence of love. Just like we have a sun that emanates light, but there are no planets that emanate darkness. We don't turn on a dark switch. There's no such thing as darkness. There is no foundational basis for darkness. Darkness will always be the absence of light. We have light. When we experience darkness at night, it's because we've turned our back on the sun. The sun is behind us. It went down. We're facing the other way, so it's dark. We're seeing the shadow that is projected, no different than if you're walking and the sun is behind you and you look down, you're going to see your shadow. So the darkness that we see is the absence of the light because we're looking the opposite way. So when you begin to understand that fear is the absence of love, meaning fear is only possible because we stop loving. If you block your love, if you decide, well, I'm not going to love you, if you decide that you're not going to be happy with somebody, then fears and worries and concerns begin to come up because they are the expression of the absence of love. So when we look at the world today is September the 10th, 2025. One of the big things on the news right now is the murder of the Ukrainian girl who was in a train, and this gentleman stands behind her and just absolutely slashes her throat right there on the train. Nobody does anything. I'm sure people were probably in shock. And this is a big thing on the news. And what makes it a big thing on the news is because it's not been on the news. And when you look at the situation, if we take it apart and we begin to pay attention to what is happening, it's because it is highlighting what humanity has been doing. We have been taking sides. We're with the whites, we're with the blacks, we're with the women, we're with the men, we're with the trans, we're with the straights, we're with the Catholics, we're with the atheists, we're with the Satanists, we're with the, Islamic. We have been conditioned to take sides by people who did not want us to know that we are all one. If we knew our oneness, if you fully understood what you are, not who you are, what you are, and you understood that we are all made of non-physical energy. We are pure consciousness. Now, this is one of the things in our journey that it takes a while to get to that point that you understand that we're non-physical. You have to understand metaphysics. You have to understand quantum physics. You have to open your mind, expand your mind from just the physical stuff that you're used to. It took me a long time. I'm going to say it was a good 5 years when I began to enter into the realm that everything is made of energy to really zero in on what that meant. And I'll tell you what it means is the most amazing gift that we can give ourselves, which is the truth of who we are, and only the truth will set us free. And the truth about who we are is that as non-physical beings, we are one energy. You cannot divide up that energy. There's no cutting off a piece of energy and discarding it. Everything is non-physical energy. Hello, brother. Everything is made of non-physical energy. Einstein told us E equals mc squared. Energy equals the mass that we see with light. The matter that we see is what we have focused on as that is real, not the energy that holds all that together, not the energy that everything is made from. So when we look at what is happening in the world, when we look at the divisiveness, the hatred, the wars, the famines, the haves and the have-nots, all of that is the result of us not knowing who we are. So the only truth that is going to set us free is to get curious enough to find out, who am I really? What am I made of? Because when we go down that rabbit hole and we begin to understand the true physics of who we are, that we are non-physical energy, we cannot help but come to the understanding that we're connected to all that is. We are truly one. So from that oneness, then begins the process of learning to cultivate a relationship with all of our brothers and sisters. And why do we have brothers and sisters who hate each other, who war with each other, who kill each other? Like this young man, just this random girl that enters into the train, he just slashes her throat right there in broad daylight. And what causes somebody to do that? Well, we can say that it's mental illness. We can say that they are possessed. We can say that they're taking drugs. We can come up with all kinds of answers. But the foundational reason anybody can do something dark is because they're blocking their own light. It's not possible for anybody to do anything that is hateful, that is mean, that is hurtful, if they know who they are. So we spend a lot of time, humanity has been for thousands of years trying to come up with reasons for why we have issues, and every one of them points to blaming something or someone. It's the mama's fault. It's the judge's fault. It's the medication fault. It's this fault. It's that fault. It's the drug's fault. And Course in Miracles is really clear. While we are blaming, we are absolutely denying ourselves from the ability to find the truth. And the truth is very clear. The Course is super clear, which is why I love teaching from the Course. There is no ambiguity in the Course. There is no black and white in the Course. It is not only consistent, it is repetitive, and it is simple. But you have to train your mind to recognize the simplicity of it, because the ego loves to complicate things. The ego is the absence of the spirit that we are, the truth of who we are. So the ego, in its absence, like our shadow when we're blocking the light, in its absence, and in the absence of truth, ego has no choice but to make things up. When you're looking at your shadow, if you believe that you are that shadow, you're going to have a distorted perception of who you are. You won't be focusing on that you are the human body that is blocking the light of the sun, because you're facing and looking at the shadow. So humanity is we're at a point right now, and there's no turning back. We have been moving in this direction since the harmonic convergence. I'm going to say since the beginning of time, but it has sped up since the harmonic convergence, when humanity as a collective, enough of us said there has to be another way. And the teachings to help support those who want to find another way have been around for thousands of years. Jesus gave them to us 2,000 years ago. If you really study why Jesus was killed, he was killed because he was sharing inconvenient truths. It was not convenient for the leaders of that time to have somebody walk around and tell you, you and the Father are one. It was not convenient for the leaders, the tax collectors, to have somebody tell you, you're the creator of your reality. You and God are one. You are powerful. You love your neighbor as yourself and everything is going to be okay. That's not convenient if you are operating with a hierarchy that requires people to be afraid so that they will send you their 10% or 20% or whatever fees they need to pay you, and so that they will bow down and do the things that you want them to do that are unloving, such as staying in poverty, staying in hunger, not getting the proper medical care, operating in a place of, where you're in fear because you've got criminals running around. Now, just as Jesus said, we are to love the criminal just as much as we love our mother and our father and our child and our best friend. There is to be no distinction. And that is an important part of A Course in Miracles, because it teaches us to begin to love the people who have done things that we are perceiving have been harmful to us, have been hurtful, have been harmful to the world at large. To love the warmongers, to love the liars and the cheaters who have risen into positions of power, who have maintained humanity in a state of enslavement. We need to love them. And we will not be able to move through this bifurcation to the higher timelines, to the timelines of ascension, where we are experiencing peace on earth, because we're all going to be vibrating at the frequency that begins with the courage to accept the truth. And most people don't like the truth because the truth pisses us off. Nobody wants to find out that they've been lied to. Nobody wants to realize I'm 50 years old and my whole life has been a lie. You mean everything that I was told, most of it, 99.9% of it, was a lie? Nobody wants to do that. And the reason we don't want to do that is because the ego does not like being wrong. And to admit that I've been lied to is to admit, oh shit, I've been wrong my whole life. So it requires an incredible amount of courage and, of course, incredible maturity, which is why I love teaching the characteristics of a teacher of God, because one of the characteristics is open-mindedness. You have to be willing to listen. You've got to realize that the only thing that is going to save us is to change our perception. That's what the whole miracle is about, a shift in perception to see things differently. Well, to see things differently is not to continue to say your way is the only way. So, as we're moving through this time of bifurcation, the acceleration has taken place. I've used this analogy because it's just a perfect analogy. We have been at the train station since 1987. We've been at the train station and we have been realizing that there is, and not everybody, of course, has realized this, but there is one train that is ascending, there is one train that is going to remain or descend. By that I mean, if you look at the spiral and you look at right in this area, I'm going to say encourage, you're either going to go up and spiral bigger and out, which is the fifth dimension, or you're going to spiral down and you're going to loop into a tighter, smaller idea of yourself. That is not a punishment. This is one of the greatest gifts that our Creator has given us, free will. You can choose which timeline you want to be on. This is talked about in the Bible. We are at the time, and I'm not a big Bible person, so I just quote only the things that stick in my mind without delving into it too deeply. But we are in the time of the harvest, the separation of the wheat from the chaff. The wheat has nutrition. Think of that as a higher timeline where we move to operate with one another because we love each other and we want to do things that are for the greater good of all. Or we are going to move with the chaff, which has no nutritional value except it's going to give us the opportunity to feel that righteousness of the ego. We're going to block more of our light and we are going to descend in frequency, meaning we're going to be comfortable. And it takes courage. As a soul, it takes courage to descend because as a soul, you know you're incarnating in a timeline where you're going to encounter very difficult, challenging things. However, those difficult, challenging things are opportunities for us to choose love instead of fear, to choose truth instead of illusion. It's an expansion of our awareness of all of the infinite possibilities that God is. Which is why, when you understand that you are one with God and everything is one, you can't help but love your neighbors, no matter what frequency they're at, high or low, it doesn't matter, because they are all an aspect of you. And they're each having an experience that sends information to the grand central source. So when you see somebody committing a murder like this young man, from a soul perspective, he has a soul contract with that girl. Now, I know people that are not on this path say that's ridiculous. How can that be? How could she have had a soul contract with him? Well, if you look at what is happening with their story, that's a big soul contract. What it is doing, it is bringing to the foreground the fact that we have been not only lied to by the media, which is all part of a grand deceptive plan. If you want to go down rabbit holes, go learn about Project Mockingbird. See, humanity has been so ignorant. And when we're ignorant and we don't really know the truth because we're blocking the light, so we're operating in darkness and shadow, when we don't know the truth, what happens is that the ego gets arrogant. And now I'm going to defend the truth. This is the way that it is. That's not true. This is true. With this is why a characteristic of a teacher of God is defenselessness. When you begin to understand the truth, you don't need to defend it because you understand that the truth is a truth is a truth, and nothing anyone says or does is going to alter it. So, as I began to understand that I'm on this process of bifurcation, I'm on the ascension timeline. I already made that choice consciously. I decided that that is what I prefer. So I am training my mind to think with God. I am training my mind to see what is, to forgive people, to recognize everybody is doing the best that they can with what they've got. I don't need to judge anybody who is making terrible choices, because to judge them is to put myself in a position that I don't know what their full life paths is. But I do know that everybody has a purpose to fulfill. So I accept that there is a purpose in these two beings coming together and having that experience, because the rest of humanity that is observing this is at different levels of consciousness. There are those at a higher frequency than I am that see it, and they absolutely send love to both of them. There are those in lower frequencies of consciousness that look at this and want revenge, or are in anger, or are in total complete guilt or shame for whatever they might have done to participate in this thing. Maybe the people who didn't stand up to help this girl might feel guilt. Maybe the attorneys that and the judges who let this guy out, and he was not convicted, 14 different offenses, and he was not convicted. And I think he spent a very little bit of time in jail, but basically they let him out. And my understanding is that, I don't know if it was the mayor of the city, which is somewhere in North Carolina, basically said, we have to be compassionate with people and not incarcerate everybody. I totally get that. However, it is more compassionate to put somebody in jail and provide rehabilitation and recognize that for the greater good of all, we need to pull people who are totally completely deluded into thinking that not they're separate, that they get to override somebody else's life, that they're right, and whatever it is that they want to do, no matter how nefarious or how criminal or how whatever, somehow is okay. We need to help move those people into a place to remind them, hey, you're holy. You are a holy being of God. Help them train their minds into remembering the truth of who they are. Because I can guarantee you that every single person who does anything that is unloving does not remember the truth of who they are. It is not possible for the light that has been blocked to act like light. It's not possible. You've got to turn on the light. So the mind has to be trained into remembering that you are love. So while we operate in a humanity that does not understand the true concepts of consciousness, this is psychology at the deepest of levels. Probably one of the greatest psychologists that we ever had was Carl Jung. And he explained it. He laid it out there for us to understand. And his teachings were really not that long ago. So within the last 100 or so years, he was on the forefront of explaining how the mind works. We have to face our shadows. We have to look at the places within us that are projecting such fear, such hatred, such anger, such deception. We have to look at that. Only by looking at our shadow can we then recognize that we are the light that needs to turn on. Because once you turn on as a light, there will be no shadow. So, A Course in Miracles is very, very clear. You are the holy child of God because God is holiness itself. To really understand what holiness means, most of us think holiness is some kind of lofty thing like special, and Course in Miracles is not about specialness. Holiness means you are whole, perfect, and complete. In your wholeness, there is nothing missing. So if you're feeling lack, if you're feeling worry, if you're feeling anger, if you're feeling revenge, you've got to look at what's missing. Why is it that I need to do this thing to feel complete? Well, if you really dive into with courage and integrity, honesty, another characteristic of a teacher of God is honesty. Dive in with honesty. Why is it that I need to take somebody's life? Why is it that I need to steal? Why is it that I need to lie? If you go into that, you will end up inevitably in your childhood. You've had experiences, you were taught by people who didn't remember the truth, and we have been perpetuating these hand-me-down beliefs generation after generation after generation after generation. We've been lied to, our parents were lied to, our grandparents were lied to. That's why the Course tells us don't go blaming on any of these people. Forgive them all. They knew not what they were doing. They really did not know. My mom had no idea that she was being given information by her parents. She agreed to it because she loved them and she passed them on to me thinking she loved me and she was doing the best thing that she could for me. Not knowing that one day I was going to start questioning these things and I was going to find out my mama was lied to. So was her grandmother and her mother and my grandmother and so on and so forth. The Course tells us that to really find out the truth, you must go to the beginning of every thought system. It is very, very clear. And just logically think about it. Catholicism started, Christianity started in the years 325 after Jesus's death. There was no Christianity before that. Jesus wasn't even a Christian. So you have to logically understand this started at some point. Who started it? Why did they start it? Why did we have to create a religion after a man who didn't come here to establish a religion? He came to tell us to move away from the religion of that he grew up in, which was Judaism. Buddha. We talk about Buddha and being a Buddhist, and Buddhism is blah, blah, blah. Buddha wasn't a Buddhist. Buddha was a Hindu. He grew up in that, but then he realized, okay, there's more. So then we create a religion after Buddha. And then we've got Jesus who is trying to tell us there's so much more than this Judaism that you've been taught. There is so much more to God. And what do? We create a religion with rules and laws and regulations and totally completely ignore the essence of the messages that he was crucified for. And again, he was only crucified because he was sharing inconvenient lies for those who needed to maintain humanity, completely ignorant and totally under their control. Because while we don't know the truth, we are willing to buy into the lies that we have to work really hard and we got to pay taxes and we've got to, everything is about proving ourselves and acquiring and becoming and getting, and then someday you're somebody. That is not what holiness is. Your wholeness comes from you coming within, getting to know the truth of who you are. It is from the inside out. It requires nothing external. As a matter of fact, if you're holding on to anything external, it's because you really haven't let go of, you haven't untethered your soul and come inside to know the truth of who you are. So understanding who you are as a holy being of God helps you begin to see more clearly that all of our brothers and sisters are under the illusion of a story. They've all bought into what they've been taught. They bought into racial ideas. Do you know that God created every single one of us? We truly, the variety of our colors, the variety of our heights, our everything about us is because God creates us in from an infinite palette. God is not limited to two colors or one color. God has an entire array of colors. We can be any shade that God wants us to be. And instead of respecting that, we have been oppressing one another. Whether it was the men oppressing the women oppressing the men. Yes, there was a time when the women were oppressing men. And we got way out of whack. Whether it's, the Jews oppressing the Christians or the Christians killing off the non-Christians, all of that is human made. All of that is a result of the darkness that comes when you block the light. When you are not in alignment with the truth of who you are, you make up shit. That's just the way it goes. And when you are buying into what has been made up for thousands of years and it comes in a book and they tell you, well, this is the holy word of God, and you don't question it, well, you in your ignorance become very arrogant and nobody can have a conversation with you because yes, this is the Holy Bible, the holy truth of God. Do you know how many people would tell me that the Bible was the Word of God, and I do not doubt for 1 second that the Bible was inspired, just as I've been inspired by God. There are lots of things that were inspired, but if you look more deeply and you look at timelines and you question things and you really become a scholar and you study it, you see that it's got so many holes. It is not the Word of God, but God did inspire some parts of it. So keep what God inspired, and I'll tell you pretty much what got inspired is in red letters. And that can be attributed to what Jesus was saying. And even that is not fully accurate because so much of what he says, so much of what he attempted to teach us was not allowed into the Bible because it was all about freedom. You are a free being. And if you are participating in oppression, if you're participating in doing what others tell you to do, it's because you want to. Now, none of us want to hear that. I didn't want to be lied to. Well, you're never going to find your source of power if you do not admit that at some level, soul level, you wanted to have an experience of separation. The Course is really clear. Our ego mind is the result of our choosing to believe that we're separate from God. But that's a crazy idea because we cannot be separate from the source that we are because it's all one big conglomerate of consciousness. It's one big blob of energy. Is it massive blob? Yes, because it encompasses everything. But we are still one with all that is. This young man and young woman that had that encounter for the purpose of activating massive conversations around the world that are opportunities to highlight what are the things that we need to correct. Not because they were wrong, because they're part of the 3D world. If you're wanting to ascend, you're not going to do those things. But if you're ascending, you've got to look at what's no longer, of the frequency that you prefer so that you can begin to untether yourself from that. If the media has been lying, you want to cut yourself off from the media. Don't listen to people who lie to you. But how do you know they're lying to you if you're not open-minded and willing to sort things out? And most of us operate with shallow information. We have been conditioned to remain in a place of, the immediate stuff that we need. We've got to have our comfort. We got to have our stuff. We got to have our books or our purses or, the latest outfit or the latest haircut or the whatever. We are so conditioned to be focused on very shallow things. Nothing wrong with that because it's part of the 3D world. But if we're ascending, we got to go deeper. We got to go deeper than that. We got to get to the point of finding out what is the origin of every thought system. What was there before that thought system started? That is what's separating those who are ascending from those who are descending. You have to want to know what was there before the 3D became an opportunity. What was there is creation. God, infinite potential, absolute, unconditional love, allowing you to go as low as you want to go. Kind of like the limbo. How low can you go? So we went as low as maybe we have gone. And maybe we don't need to go any lower. So we're choosing to ascend. Well, to ascend, you got to find out what is the truth because only the truth sets us free. So last week we looked at paragraph, I think we did, or lessons. We did lessons maybe 36 and 37. Today we're going to look at lesson 38. I'm just going to give the highlight of the last few lessons that I have done. Starting in episode 211, we looked at the lesson. The title of lesson 35 is My Mind is Part of God's I Am Very Holy. That is about establishing the understanding that who you are is sacred. You really are sacred. So when you sit with yourself and you're mad at yourself and I'm not good enough and I'm not smart enough and I'm not capable enough, you are absolutely unaware that you are sacred. So we've got to begin to at least get curious. Well, if the Course says that my mind is part of God, so I'm very holy, how can that be? Instead of, that can't be true, because in our arrogance, we always show how ignorant we are. Those two are two sides of the same coin. To be ignorant and righteous about your ignorance, you have to be arrogant because the arrogance is what lets you be righteous, even though you're righteous about what you don't even know you're wrong about. So there has to be a willingness to begin to question. Then last episode that we had, we looked at lessons 36 and 37. 36 says, my holiness envelops everything I see. That is to begin to train ourselves to realize that it is your holiness that will begin to see the holiness of everyone, of everything that you see. So when we're looking at these two people on the train, my holiness envelops the guy who killed the girl and the girl who was killed by the guy. They are both holy beings. And if we take sides and we stop there, we are being very ignorant. And if we think we're on the right side, we're being very arrogant. Because the truth is that these are souls who have chosen to incarnate, playing out a role that has a huge learning potential for humanity. Remember, the Course tells us everything is a classroom. Every opportunity, every situation is a classroom that God wants us to learn from. So if we take this thing and refuse to do what we have been conditioned to do, which is take sides, and stay neutral, stay in the middle, and learn everything you can about it, in your honesty, you will see that so much of what happened there was absolutely, totally, completely avoidable. Avoidable if people were not just operating in 3D, avoidable if they were raising their consciousness. So when we move to higher frequencies, we're not going to have murders. Who's going to murder their holy brother or sister? It's not going to happen. But for that to not happen in the years ahead, for those who are on the train and they're bifurcating into that higher dimension, we have to learn from a very young, from the moment of birth, that who you are is a holy child of God. But that is going to be taught to you by parents who are either fully accepting that or in the process of learning that. So those who are becoming conscious, accepting the truth of who they are, they're on the path of forgiveness. They don't have time. We do not have time. When we are on the ascension path, there is zero time to be judging, because to judge is to attempt to do something that you have no knowledge about. Again, to judge is to become arrogant about something you're ignorant about. So when you're on the ascension path, you can look at things with total honesty. This is what it is. I'm trusting there is a plan. What can I learn from this so that I can become one that can, if I'm inspired to facilitate the changes in the legal system, or the changes in how we provide security on trains until the world is a saner place. You will be inspired into doing something when you commit to want to be used by God to do things that are for the greater good of all. Lesson 37 told us, my holiness blesses the world. If you don't understand that your holiness, your acceptance of the magnificent being that you are, is what will bless the world, meaning it is what gives the world permission to not be judged by you. And when you can step back from that holier than thou judgmental person, you begin to be an example of one who moves into a place of neutrality. And you know what the world needs now more than anything is for people to tell the truth. I don't know what anything is for, but I know God knows. Let me have a conversation with God. Let me go into prayer time. Let me connect. Let me, in my meditation, hear, God, what would you have me do? See, the Course is teaching us all of these things, not for us to memorize them and fill up our head with information, but it is for us to walk this talk. My newsletter that I just put out on Tuesday is all about that. I had to learn to walk the talk. I was all spiritual on my high and mighty pedestal when I was a teacher and I was speaking at the Unity churches and spiritual living centers in Georgia. I was seen as a spiritual teacher. And then I'm in a relationship with Ken, and then all of a sudden, it's like my spiritualized ego got all high and mighty, and I knew better than he knew. And that absolutely destroyed that relationship. But it was supposed to be that way because the lessons that I got from it were amazing. It helped me see the spiritual ego. So as you study the Course, you're not just to keep this information in your head, you are to embody it. You will not move into the fifth dimension if you're not embodying the frequency of unconditional love. In the lower frequencies, lack of love is I don't care about you, so killing you is no big deal. As a matter of fact, it's acceptable to go around killing people, to go around selling drugs and getting people hooked on I don't even know the names of all those drugs, but it seems like it's okay that to make a profit, it's okay if I sell a child into prostitution. To make a profit, it's okay if I sell you drugs and get you hooked and make you dependent on that. It's okay, because I don't love you and I don't care about you for me to go into politics and be more concerned about filling up my pockets than doing things that are for the greater good. All of those things are acceptable. Look at big pharma. It's okay to make profits. We don't want healed people because then we lose customers. If you begin to look at logic, then things begin to make sense why the world is so fucked up. And it is that way because we don't know who we are. So we can't blame the world because we're projecting our lack of awareness of who we are onto the world and expecting the world to teach us what it is that we're supposed to know. So we got a big system that is messed up, and the only way out is to come into a very committed journey to find out really who are you before all these things got created. There is a starting point to every thought system. The 3D thought system was not there in the beginning. What was there is the consciousness of love that allows us to have free will to choose to participate in the 3D thought system because we begin to forget who we are and we cast a shadow and we are not in touch with our light because nobody else that raised us was in touch with their own light. So in lesson number 37, you find out about your holiness and you begin to bless the world because as it says in paragraph 3, your holiness is the salvation of the world. How does the world get saved? You stop condemning it, and you begin to look at the light in everyone. You begin to look at that girl on the train with gratitude for the journey that she chose to have, for the lessons that she's bringing about for us. You look at that man not to judge him because of the color of his skin or whatever. You begin to see, well, what are the systems that allowed this to happen? You become a student of truth. You begin to see the illusions and you become an active participant in the changes that you want to see in the world. So today we're going to look at lesson 38. There is nothing my holiness cannot do. And yeah, this is a biggie, but we got to understand why this is. And let me just say here real quickly, if you want to join us in the Awareness Academy, you can even join at the free level, the curiosity level, and access some of the classes that I offer there about A Course in Miracles. But also, I'm doing a series called The 10 Characteristics of a Teacher of God, diving into the manual for teachers. We've already had 2 classes. There are 10 more to go. The series is recorded, so you'll have access to anything you have missed. But if you really want to dive into what these teachings are all about, join us in the Awareness Academy. And something else, I've got a friend of mine. He's going to be coming September 25th. His name is John Adams. He is a musician who has found his connection to source through understanding frequency, understanding music, sound. And he's going to come and share the healing power of sound. And in the academy, you'll be able to find the links for that. It's going to be a Zoom link, but it's listed in our calendar inside of the academy because I want people to understand how we need to feel our frequency. And the reason our frequencies have been so low is because we've just been conditioned through sound, through music. We listen to music, rap music, rock music, heavy metal, whatever. We are given so much music, so many frequencies that really have affected us and have caused us to become disconnected from who we really are. So you need to understand frequency, and he's going to talk about that. So paragraph 1, your holiness reverses all the laws of the world. It is beyond every restriction of time, space, distance, and limits of any kind. Your holiness, you need to understand your holiness and you need to understand the frequency of your holiness. It is the highest possible frequency. So if you're feeling low, tight, tense, dense, and depressed and suppressed, it's because you are shut down. You have spiraled into a very small idea of who you are. We need to expand, and to expand is to become aware of the truth of who you are. This is why you have to become open-minded and willing to be curious about anything and everything. Before you take a side and get all righteous, ask, well, what is it that I need to know about this? What else is there to this? Come like a little child, curious. Well, this is what I learned, but from my mom, and I appreciate that, or from my teacher, but there's something here that is different, maybe contradictory. Can you hold both of them and learn how to feel maybe which one has a higher frequency, which one is a higher truth? Just because your mama taught you something doesn't mean it was true. You got to get comfortable with that. Our parents taught us things that were nonsensical. When you begin to step back, you can see they were taught those things. So, sentence number 3 says, your holiness is totally unlimited in its power because it establishes you as a son of God, at one with the mind of his creator. You are one with God. One of the most difficult things that we are all going to have to do is accept that we are creators. That's why you cannot look at that guy and that girl on the train as anything less than creators. Because if you see them as less than that, you're going to see them as victims and bullies. That's to see the ego side of them. And yes, there was a victim and a bully on the ego side of things, on the shadow side of things. But the light that they are, creators of that reality. Oh, I'm going to sneeze. They are, oh, excuse me, they are creators of that reality. And again, people don't like to hear this because when you are operating at a lower frequency in victimization, you don't want to hear that a girl that got murdered was creating her reality. But you will not come to the place of understanding how powerful, how holy we are until you begin to look at, well, if they created this, why? What are the reasons so that we can give them their proper placement in creation? Creators who came to help us experience a classroom that is teaching us things that we need to learn so that we can begin to undo the wrong mind that allows for murdering, the wrong mind that allows for cheating and lying and stealing. By judging the ones who do those things does not help us change those things. We have to be willing to look beyond that. And that requires that we recognize that we all have totally unlimited power. Paragraph 2 says, through your holiness, the power of God is made manifest. When we begin to accept that we are holy and we recognize that we are created by God to create, we begin to tap into a power that is absolutely beyond comprehension. And that power is what's allowing us to co-create a happy dream. Sorry, I'm going to have to blow my nose here. So I'm feeling the... Until we accept our holiness, we cannot really accept how powerful we are. However, when people are coming from their ego and they think they are God and the ego is God, they access a lot of this power. But the power that they use is a power based on fear. So that's why they have to go into controlling and lying, manipulation. They can't say anything, straight, but they're using the power. Why? Because they have it. We are holy. We have power. But in darkness, you use that power in selfish ways. You use that power in a very service to self way. And that keeps people in 3D. When we use that power with awareness that we are holy, that power then is used with light, with truth for the greater good of all. That's why the bifurcation of timelines, these are operating in the greater good of all. We know that we wouldn't do anything to anybody to harm anybody because to do to them is to do to us. Giving and receiving are one. So those who are in service to themselves through lies and manipulations and cheating, they will continue to operate in those lower frequencies. And they can because they are holy and they're creating. But when you can see the game and you go, well, I don't want to continue to create things that hurt me, then how are you going to use your superpower? Well, you're going to create things that help you. But when they help you, they help the greater good. So through your holiness, the power of God is made manifest. And the power of God is always going to be about love. Anybody who's hurting, who's doing something nefarious, who's doing something selfish, that is not the love that God gave us, but it is the power that God gave us. So that power is blocking love. So therefore, you're going to have things that are going to create fear. Not because there's a source of a power of fear, but because it's the power of creation blocking love that is then projecting fear. So you've got to understand the mechanics of this. Very simple mechanics, but the mind has to be trained into understanding what's going on. Sentence number 2. Through your holiness, the power of God is made available. We got to come back to accepting, to become humble enough to accept that we are holy, and so is everybody else. And then cultivate a relationship with God. Come inside, go into prayer time, not the rote religious prayer, although that can be helpful. Come inside, begin to get to know if I'm made of God. If God is energy, God is pure consciousness, and I'm made of energy, I've got God in every one of my cells. Sit and talk to yourselves. Sit and connect. God, what is it that made you want to express through me? Begin to have a conversation. You move out of your head and be distracted with all the stuff out there and come to know God within and cultivate that kind of a relationship. It's just a beautiful process. Sentence 3, and there is nothing the power of God cannot do. Your holiness then can remove all pain, can end all sorrow, and can solve all problems. It can do so in connection with yourself and with anyone else. It is equal in its power to help anyone because it is equal in its power to save anyone. As we read in the previous lesson, our holiness is what brings salvation to the world. To begin to accept that you are holy, to begin to accept that you are loving, is to begin the process of separating yourself. And it's not the separation that the ego wants us to do. It's that we're separating ourselves from the illusion. We're separating ourselves from the lie. We're untethering, we're bifurcating, whatever your word you want to use. You are literally becoming more in alignment with oneness. And as you become more in alignment with oneness, that which is lower frequency and not in alignment is going to fall away. It will not be part of your experience. In the next 50 years, those who have chosen the timeline of ascension are not going to experience sorrows and pains and deaths and lying and cheating and hunger and poverty. Those things will not be part of your reality. But we have to train ourselves to believe that we deserve all of that so that we can then begin to project that and manifest that as our reality. So we have all been buying into this whole idea that the ego's laws have more power. And as we make a decision to be under no laws but God's, as is one of the lessons in the course, then you want to know, well, God, tell me your laws. And it's a law of accepting that, number one, you are created to create, so you're a creator. Then accepting that you're one with everybody else. You can't be better or lesser than. Nobody's going to be above you. There's not going to be any royalty that you're going to be bowing down to. There's not going to be any poor people that you're going to say, oh, they're lesser than. That will not happen. You're one with all. You're the creator of your reality. We will all be manifesting because our thoughts will bring about instant manifestation. But we can't do all those things where our thoughts are clogged up with the old stuff, blocking the light, blocking the truth. So, Course in Miracles is a course in mind training to get the cobwebs out of our head and to allow us to begin to open up to what there's got to be another way. But your power, this is how you know somebody who's waking up. They realize that all of us are equal. It's paragraph number 3. If you are holy, so is everything God created. Boom, right there. We are all the same. That guy, that girl, they're just as holy as you are. Acting out low frequency experiences because of the beliefs that they were holding. That girl, I'm not saying that she was believing, oh, I should be stabbed, but she's from Ukraine. She left Ukraine because she was afraid of being killed in Ukraine. So in her consciousness, there was a fear of death. There's a fear of being hurt. So she comes to America, and here she's killed on a train. So there are beliefs that we hold that facilitate the experiences that we have. When we don't understand the power of our mind, the power that we have as creators, we are thinking thoughts that are becoming reality. This is why we have to train our mind to begin to think the best, to begin to think with God, to begin to think with love, to let go of fear. Why? Because perfect love casts out all fear. We looked at that in one of our classes last night. Perfect love casts out all fear. You cannot have perfect love for anybody else until you begin to love yourself enough to feel that you deserve that higher frequency, that you deserve to accept your holiness. Sentence 2 in paragraph 3, you are holy because all things he created are holy. And all things he created are holy because you are. So when you look at something like this, all things he created are holy because I'm holy. Everything is holy. If you are holy, so is everything God created. Then you cannot sit in the arrogance that says, I know better, and this bad person is a murderer, and we're going to do terrible things to him. We're going to make him suffer. He's going to have to pay the consequences. Well, you're projecting your unhealed wounds. You're projecting your own lower frequency belief systems to see him, that murderer, as holy like you, is to then become open-minded. How did he get to that position? What happened? What's wrong in the system that allows these things to happen? Then instead of being lost in the minutia of what's happening today, we go backwards in time and look at all of the systems that have been put in place that have allowed for the brainwashing, that has allowed humanity to do things that are unloving and unkind to one another. We're not going to solve things by just locking people up, although that may be necessary in the short term. We're going to solve things by getting to the root of what has happened, which is what most people don't want you to see. Because if we went back to the root of what has happened, what we're going to discover is that most of the people that we gave power to contributed to all the problems that we have today. If the average citizen was running things, these things wouldn't happen. Somebody commits a crime, that would be taken care of until, they're rehabilitated or they're no longer a menace or maybe they end up in jail. They stay there. But the streets would be safe. They were much safer when I was younger because we actually had people who were not afraid to jail a person of this color, this gender, or that gender. When we became politically correct, that was code for we're going to dumb you down. Because now when you can't say facts, this is not okay. While we are in the process of learning to remember the truth of who we are, we have to go through a process of purification, not just ourselves individually, but all of humanity. There has to be a purification process where we look at everything that is unloving, everything that is unkind, everything that is selfish and greedy and grotesque. We have to look at where did that get started. And I'll tell you, this is going to be a very inconvenient truth that is coming out more and more every day. You see glimpses of it. But we're going to find out that very few people who have been empowered have allowed for some of the most horrendous things to happen because they serve as distractions from our remembering our holiness. That is something most of the elites don't want you to know. There are a few, though, that are attempting to expose things, but most people don't understand what they're doing. So they get bashed, they get judged, but that's because when we go righteous, we can't be open-minded to really hear what's going on. But sit back. September, October, November are going to be times of big revelations of the things that we need to see so that we can begin to decide there's got to be another way and collectively not only demand that things change, but become participants in the change we want to see in the world because the outside's not going to change until we change on the inside. Sentence number 4 says, in today's exercises, we will apply the power of your holiness to all problems, difficulties, or suffering in any form that you happen to think of in yourself or in someone else. We will make no distinction because there are no distinctions. And then this gets into the practice period, and it has us identify situations specifically, to name people specifically. So let's go into in paragraph number 4 to sentence number 5. which is right there in the middle, the italicized portion. So in the situation involving, let's say, Paul, in which I see myself, there is nothing that my holiness cannot do. I could say in the situation involving the murderer, in which I see myself, because I'm now part of this thing, because I'm judging and I'm watching the videos or whatever, there is nothing my holiness cannot do. I'm acknowledging my holiness can do something. Sentence 6, in the situation involving me, in which Paul sees himself, there is nothing my holiness cannot do. So whether it's a situation with them or with me, there is nothing our holiness cannot do. These exercises, and I'm not going to read the rest because you can spend time looking at this, except I'm going to read in paragraph 5, sentence 3. One of the things that we need to get comfortable with is that statement in sentence 3. There is nothing my holiness cannot do because the power of God lies in me. The Course in Miracles takes us through a period of mind training to look at the ego, to look at the lies that we've been telling ourselves. And then it begins to give us the truth. You are holy. You need to accept it. You are powerful. Anything that you see in the world that is unloving, it's because those people don't remember who they are. That does not deserve your judgment, our judgment. It deserves our awareness, our honesty, radical honesty. These are souls who are just as holy as you are. They've descended, they've gotten caught up in the programming, they are doing things that otherwise a soul would never do. But when they come into encounters like this young woman and this man on the train, they are here to provide incredible lessons. We will learn from those lessons if we get off of our arrogant pedestals by taking sides, which is crazy. That's what I'm watching. Everybody picking a side. Well, that's not going to help. That's the ego keeping us in arrogance. And the arrogance is because we're ignorant that we are holy beings. How did we get to this place? Well, we don't teach about our holiness in school. We don't teach about our holiness when moms and dads are stressed out and both have to go to work and put the kid in daycare, hand the baby over to some person that you don't even know. I did that with one of my children. And you hand them over and you let them raise them because I was too busy having to work and along with my husband to pay the bills. I really wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, but I couldn't afford to do that because I had been programmed to believe that, women's independence, I needed to burn my bra and go work. And none of those things I would have done had I not been conditioned to think that I needed to accumulate stuff, that I needed to acquire more things, that I needed to have a big house, or I needed to have a big car, I needed all these things. I need to pay the taxes that kept somehow creeping up all the time. You're going to see a lot of these old systems that have kept humanity in deception are going to fall apart. Those who want to stay in deception are going to side in righteousness and arrogance that this is who's going to take care of them. And in their ignorance that they are holy, they are using the power of creation to descend into and remain in that frequency. If you're watching this and you believe that you know that something is happening that doesn't make sense out there in the world, that you feel there's got to be another way, that you recognize that love and kindness and compassion and generosity and experiencing peace and joy, as it says in here, you do not have to experience, you can remove all pain, all sorrow, and can solve all problems. If you are one that really wants to get to the place that you experience that, and you have given up arrogance, so you're becoming more humble, you're becoming more open-minded, you're becoming more tolerant, and you want to learn to trust, join us at the Awareness Academy if you want to learn more about this, or on your own, study the Course in Miracles. The truth will set you free. But first, you got to want to know the truth. And second, when you start discovering the truth, it's going to piss you off because you're going to find out that you've been living a lie. You've been supporting a system that has been unloving. But don't spend time judging it unless, of course, you're moving through the levels of consciousness. And then, you may hit some anger, frustration, feel it to heal it. And then keep moving, keep moving. Make holiness your final destination. Because when you accept your holiness fully, then you are totally free. You are not going to be involved in 3D stuff. You'll be in this world, but you will not be of it. And what happens is then you feel the inspiration from God. You will be here to serve the greater good. It just, life becomes more fun and easy. Does it on the outside look like, you've got bazillions or whatever? That won't matter because it's not about what you acquire. It's about what you let go of that frees you to be in service to the greater good of all. So that's the transmission today. I feel like that's complete. If anybody has any thoughts or comments, unmute yourselves. Otherwise, I will see you here next week. Last week we did not meet because I was out of town celebrating my daughter's birthday. So don't look for an episode from last week. But this one is, what did I say? 213. Yes, Miss Paula.
Well, thank you, thank you. This was a wonderful blessing. I so enjoyed it, and just like a sponge, I just absorbed it all. Now you talk about like we were in the 3D and then we jumped to the five. What happened to the fourth Is there a fourth, or it's
Yes and no. The fourth dimension is like the bridge. So when
okay.
we are doing the work, we're moving kind of through a period. It's like the a middle place where we're not quite grounded in knowing that we are love and that we are holy, but we know that we're not, there's nothing wrong with
Okay.
us. So it's that in between phase. And
Makes sense.
that's all that it is. So the 4D is a
Okay.
bridge, and some people are in that bridge for a shorter period of time. Sometimes it's a longer period of time. It could
Mm.
be two incarnations on that bridge. So it really is the consciousness of undoing 3D and receiving 5D.
Thank you.
That's how I look at it.
Makes so much sense.
Good, 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 good. All right,
Love you.
everybody. I'll see you all next time. Love you all so much.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.